Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being with us on this Thursday for the MAPC webinar. I am going to share my screen and set up some things while we wait for a few more folks to join us. All right. Well, we have surpassed 110 attendees already, so and we're just a little bit after noon, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for being with us on this second Thursday of the month. The Mid-Atlantic Planning Collaboration is presenting What's That Noise this afternoon with David McGettigan of Prince William County. So all things data centers and noise ordinances. So quite a hot topic. I'm going to run through a few housekeeping logistical items before I hand it over to David. Um, Hopefully, we'll have ample opportunity to get to questions this afternoon. Please submit your questions through the Q&A box. That will just help us keep track of all inquiries. Um, I'll keep the chat box open though if there's ever an opportunity for any open-ended discussion. There will also be a couple of polls that will populate on your screen in just a moment. But those should be fairly straightforward, and it's just going to help David get an idea as to how what's happening in your locality. You may have been notified on your screens that this webinar is being recorded. It will be shared to the MAPC YouTube page probably by the end of the week, or if not, by Monday afternoon. You can find all other previously recorded webinars in the series there as well. I'll drop that link in the chat along with the CM link. And to this webinar. And I will also drop a few other APA Virginia links and Mid-Atlantic planning collaboration links. Quick plug for APA Virginia's conference. We are getting ready to roll out our program, or our tentative program, I should say, and registration is planned to open in early May. So keep an eye out for conference notices. We're excited that things are coming along for Danville. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to David. I know there will be lots to discuss. So I'm going to pass it over and feel free to DM me if you have any tech questions, attendees. Thanks for being with us.
All right, thank you. Again, my name is David McGettigan. I'm the Deputy Planning Director here in Prince William County, Virginia, and I'm going to be talking about how Prince William County has been working to update our noise ordinance to particularly as a result of data center noise that has been a problem in our community. We have a lot of data centers coming in, and that's prompted us to address that problem through looking at our noise ordinance. We are not the only ones talking about noise. So what the Virginia General Assembly just passed a bill. It's waiting to be signed by the governor that would require before any rezoning or special exception or special use permit for the siting of a new high energy use facility, which ends up being a data center. Anything over 100 megawatts is what they define as a high energy use facility. Has to require a site assessment that includes a sound profile of the facility on impacts on residential units and schools located within 500 feet. So we're looking at that. That's again on the governor's desk. We'll see how that goes. Um, in 2024, the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission published a paper on data centers in Virginia report, and said data centers emit low frequency noise that is not loud enough to damage nearby residents' hearing and rarely loud enough to violate noise ordinances. And we'll talk a little bit about why that they're not violating noise ordinances, but they're still a nuisance. So what Prince William has done is we've created a new noise ordinance, but a major update to our noise ordinance. And it, of course, has the standard maximum nighttime and daytime decibels per based on the zoning district that limits that are allowed. It now includes HVAC systems. Those systems were not included in, they were exempt from nighttime noise limits, but they did have to comply with daytime noise limits. We have refined our measurement procedures to update this new procedures for our new regulations and way of measuring noise, because we've added a steady tonal noise maximum. And that's using a scale called dBc, which is a different weighted decibels scale than your typical dBA decibel scale. And we've also added some octave band standards for use and diagnosis and mitigation planning for new facilities going in, or to mitigate what the problem is, find out what the source of the noise is. So those are all things that are in our noise ordinance. And on the right is just a sample of a noise data set measurement. And on the left is the decibels level, and on the bottom are different frequency bands of the sounds. So you can see the lower frequencies are more predominant in the data center noise rather than the high frequencies. So the reason data centers are really the concerning thing is, one, their noise is 24/7. Usually they're cooling all the time. They have numerous intake fans, which are bringing air into the building and running it across the computers to cool them, and then exhaust fans exhausting that hot air on the roof. And the current A-weighted, that dBA A-weighted sound scale doesn't really address low frequency. It filters that out. And we've had a lot of data centers joining us in Prince William County, so that's of our concern. So there's a challenge, though, in regulating noise, is that there's lots of things in our environment that make noise. Some is continuous noise, some other noises fluctuate, and you're going out with a sound meter to measure the noise. That doesn't necessarily equate to how the human brain perceives noise. And so you have to make sort of that comparison to find, what makes it the noise, what makes it a noise. It's just a sound. A noise becomes annoying. And so that level of annoyance is something that you need to try and capture. And the acoustic environment can be unpredictable. I mean, there could be a train, there could be airplanes, there could be heavy road traffic in proximity to a residential community, that all can make it difficult to isolate what the problem noise is. And so we have to try and figure out a way to address that. And people think of noise as more of a steady sound pressure level source, when actually they're more common to be there's lots of fluctuation in the sound in the decibels over the course of time. So this is a sample graph of 120 seconds. And you can see that the sound pressure level can fluctuate highly over those just 120 seconds. Lower levels could be from continuous sound from mechanical equipment, or it could be from distant highway traffic. So we need to try and isolate that in order to regulate it, and figure out what is causing the sound, and be able to pinpoint it. And higher levels could be passing trucks. So there's just different things in the environment that are causing this. So we look at statistics then in sorting out the continuous noise from the transient noise. And so we can tabulate the sound pressure levels versus time, and then sort those measurements over time in descending order from highest to lowest. And then the level of it that is exceeding the limit, your maximum limit, is in there, and if it's exceeding it 50% of the time, that would be an L50. We would label that 50% of the time that sound is noise is being violated, is above the maximum. And this sort of statistical analysis can be done with all the data, the A-weighted, the C-weighted, the octave bands, and the third octave bands. So we also have a terminology of an LEQ. LEQ is the equivalent sound level. This is the average. So if you think of the previous one, the L50 as a median, this would be the mean of the average over the measurement period. And for a steady sound, that average is going to be probably equivalent to L50. And it'll help, I guess, screen out a lot of those transient noises that the dogs or birds or aircraft or individual vehicles or brief talking can be, by this analysis, can be taken out of the equation, and we can focus in on that continuous noise. And when I start describing, I'm giving you a lot of sort of background on sound pressure, because it's important in understanding how we're regulating sound. So this represents the sound pressure level from sounds at different octaves, and there's if there's too much sound, it can interfere with speech outdoors. It can be audible indoors and cause issues. It can be low frequencies, can actually be a feelable vibration, vibrating your windows, and it's actually more noticeable inside than outside sometimes. And then high frequency energy is more audible than low frequency energy. So most older noise ordinance were always based on an A-weighted sound, dBA, A-weighted sound pressure level. And that's the sum of the frequency weighted energy across frequencies. So all this energy under this A-weighted curve, it's just the dashed line, is all the sum of all the weighted of all the energy. You see the A-weighted really heavily is on the high end of the frequencies, and the low end of the frequencies are not coming out. And the low end frequencies are the ones that are coming from the HVAC system, the fans, and the vents. So, and then the high end frequencies are the ones that are coming from the that's why we chose to look at a C-weighted sound pressure because it reports more of those uh, high levels. It gives you a greater volume of pressure, but it gets those low frequencies get in there. And so um, since the A-weighted sound pressure is the most uh, audible, that's the one that uh, previous noise ordinances were focusing on, were the A-weighted, using an A-weighted scale. And if there's no letter following that it's just dB, or they sometimes use dBz, then that means there's no weight. That's just the straight measurement by octave band of all the pressure that's sound pressure that's coming in the whole spectrum. And this is the audible spectrum that our ears can hear, right? The lower than this, we definitely can't hear, and higher than that, we can't hear. So just here's another example of the distinction between A, C, and Z, is that you can see that lower end of frequencies you really aren't catching in the A-weighted scale. And the C-weighted scale, you certainly catch much more. And of course, unweighted, we get everything. So what the ramifications are for enforcement are: one, we need to screen out false positives, screen out bug noise and traffic noise, and sound level meters only report the energy, so they can't distinguish sources without help. They can't focus attention like human beings can, and they can't assign meaning, and they aren't aware of context. So that's so our goals in the noise ordinance update were to provide some you know, protection against noise sources that are incompatible with residential living, provide additional protection against continuous noise sources that weren't being captured, increase restrictions at night, and minimize, but we wanted to minimize the false positives. So the our prior noise ordinance just had one enforcement level. It had 60, it was all dBA. We did have a higher one than that was for daytime than nighttime. And it did exempt heating and cooling systems at nighttime. Private construction during daytime, public construction and utility construction, repairs and restoration service were exempt from it. We hired a consultants to help us out, Nelson Acoustics and JMT. They helped us work on the noise ordinance, craft it, and came up with some levels, created with 3 tiers of enforcement. The impulse level, so that would be a short duration impact type sound. And so a level for those, the intermittent for other kinds of now music and parties, things that we would see, and then a continuous. They recommended the octave band because then you could really narrow it in on where the violation was, and there were a lot more exemptions that were allowed. So what we ended up doing, though, of course, there's always some negotiation, and the needs of our businesses and citizens needed to be taken into account. But we did have sort of a compromise where we left our maximum dBA, daytime nighttime, in effect, but we proposed a new standard for those steady total sounds the continuous sounds using the DBC scale of 73 daytime, 68 nighttime. And we did maintain an exemption for heating and cooling systems, but only for residential heating and cooling systems are exempt for the nighttime. We kept in the other exemptions as well as uh, the utility and public construction. So enforcing that, the sound has traditionally been enforced by the police. But in the case of the continuous sounds, it's hard to give a citation to a building. So we would have that enforced by Public Works in conjunction with the police. And we would have a third party noise consultant that would help make the case for the violation. And then it's prosecuted by the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office. We did have to put into our budget when we got this approved that we would need some sound engineers on board to help review these sound recordings and document the violations. We needed vehicles for them and computers and noise meters and training to train people on how to use the noise meters because it's a different way of doing DBC and doing noise meter reading. We also are trying to be proactive through our rezoning and special use permit process and getting rezoning conditions, we call them proffers in Virginia, to have sound study or modeling. And that's actually what the state bill would require too. And during a site plan and building review, address any mitigating measures that will address the sound that might come out of the sound study and modeling. And then after they've done and constructed it, also do a study to evaluate did they comply with what they said they were going to comply with. And again, this we've recommended the octave bound sound pressure levels that similar to what our consultant recommended to help in this planning process so that when you're doing that study and modeling, you have a goal of this is what you need to get to in a residential area for a level of sound and provide that level of mitigation to that level. So other things that we need to do, of course, we're implementing, it takes effect May 1st. It was passed last year. We asked them to give us some time to get everything in place, get people hired, get the equipment, and to communicate out to residents and businesses about the process, what we were going to set up. We had to expand our procedures from intake to include the steady tonal noise, because again, previously the police department handled all of the noise complaints, and we needed to get our public works folks involved to do enforcement for the zoning ordinance and other things. And then we need to continue monitoring the effectiveness of the ordinance. We'll bring it back to the board, have to report back to the board in a year and tell them how it's coming along and how effective it's been, if there are any changes that we need to make. And we have to now have calibration procedures to make sure these equipment is calibrated properly. And there were calibration procedures before, but it's even more strenuous calibration procedures. The staff recommendations also are being considered. The board has initiated to require sound modeling prior to approval. And this may be preempted by the new state law. We're going to update our design standards and reevaluate the siting criteria regarding proximity of data centers to residential development, schools, and parks. Also, in the future, maybe get some baseline sound pressure level readings to get that, establish the ambient noise, and also maybe look to maybe in the future require some sound monitoring for um, violators who are trying to having problems not meeting the requirements. So that's all I had. Thanks for your attention, and I'm sure hopefully there are some questions that I can answer.
Yes, we have had plenty of questions come in. Thank you very much for your presentation, David. All right. One that I noted come in just a moment ago. Have you had any conditional zoning projects that required additional proffers that these new amendments did not address?
Um, no, the proffers have all been to do the sound modeling beforehand, a sound study afterwards, and comply with the new noise ordinance because we had things that were in process while this noise ordinance was being developed. So we did have some standards. We may have had some that were specific, but most of them just said whatever the noise ordinance says we'll comply with.
Okay, thank you. And going back up to some of the first questions that came in, we have Emily Wolfson. Hi, David. Stafford County recently adopted a data center ordinance back in December with several new standards, including a noise study to be conducted prior to rezoning. What we are finding is that these initial studies have a lot of assumptions due to details not be certain yet as far as materials used, distance from noisemakers, etc. Wondering how we can get these initial studies to be more accurate so that they can actually be used to better inform impacts. Wondering if any other jurisdictions have experience with this.
Yeah, that's a good concern as and a part of the calibration or of making sure the ordinance is being effective is are we getting something that's going to make it work? I think the development community, though, once the noise ordinance has been put in place, they're going to want to design something that's going to meet the ordinance. So they should be self-motivated to design something that's not going to violate the ordinance and do that study to be useful so that they don't have problems after it's constructed and they have to go back and retrofit things, which can be more expensive than figuring out from the beginning. So hopefully there's some self-policing that would be to their benefit to make sure that they do the quality modeling and ask and require that a professional do the modeling. So they would have those concerns, address those concerns.
It looks like that was a common question that came in just in terms of retrofitting. And maybe you have something additional to add here. If not, that's totally fine. A question earlier came in from Luke Peters asking, have data centers balked at these regulations, or is it something they're easily able to do? Is it possible for them to function and meet these regulations if the houses are too close?
Um, so it, the it it's also site specific on far how these impacts could be to even you know say what it could be the topography, the terrain, the vegetation. There's certainly we hope that they will comply with the regulations and do what they can and anything they can to muffle the sound, dampen the sound. There's lots of mechanical solutions that can be employed to address something that's too noisy. But the data centers have been involved in the developing the noise ordinance as far as providing input on what they thought. So we didn't surprise them with this. They've been very transparent throughout the process, what we were expecting and what we came up with.
Thank you. Another question from Sarah Parmalee. What is the typical turnaround time between noise violation notice, public reporting, or staff confirmation, and the violation being corrected or prosecuted by the AG?
Well, our hope is that we'll have an inspector go out, the train will go out and see with in a day or two of the complaint being received that can go out and do the measurement. Of course, there's so many things that could cause problems like a very windy day. It's very difficult to go out and do a noise measurement. Or if it's raining, so there's different environmental conditions that need to be right to send out. But hopefully in a few days we get someone out to go out and do the preliminary noise measurement. The police might do it, or an inspector. And then once that comes back and we've looked at it and say, yeah, there's possibly a violation here, then we'll send out our sound engineer to go out and do the measurement and make sure we have the factors that are necessary. If there's a say a highway between the data center, a highway next to nearby, to make sure we're screening the highway noise, so we set up the meter in the right location, screen it properly, and get it all done. So I mean, it could take 2 weeks to get a good measurement and reading, and then we would turn that over to the Commonwealth attorney, and it would probably take a few months to get anything going, but it would take some time to do that. I'm not sure how long that whole process takes, but it's not instantaneous. So certainly we have to allow for appropriate amount of time for that to take place. And we will, as we start going through these cases and implementing the sound, we will start getting some metrics of how long it's taking.
Thank you for those estimates. A question from Connor O'Donnell. Connor asks, have you done any preliminary budget guesswork on anticipated revenue from enforcement? 415,000 total for enforcement is a lot of money, especially if revenue from enforcement does not cover those costs. I'm thinking about how rural localities could work on enforcement given financial restraints and what lessons they can draw from your enforcement efforts.
Yeah, well, there's yeah, not just enforcement fees and fines, which were sent by the board. And I don't know how much that's going to cover, but also we did increase our review fees for these noise studies. So when these noise studies come in with the site plan and they need to be reviewed, there's going to be an additional fee to help cover the cost of reviewing that and making sure it's a good study. And we will either have that's how we would pay the third-party consultant to help us out in reviewing these studies. Or if the sound engineers on staff, then we would have money to help compensate for their time. But for the enforcement piece, that's a good question, and probably in looking at setting your enforcement your fines and your fees for that.
And speaking of third parties, that sort of connects to another question that I see here from Gary Ross. Gary says the subject, including sound studies, is complex enough to merit the attention of university professors and similar researchers. Did Prince William engage Virginia's local university researchers? Should jurisdictions like Stafford perhaps consider doing that?
Well, we and again engaged in creating the noise ordinance a consultant who specializes in noise enforcement, Nelson Acoustics and JMT in developing that. And there also we work with Rutgers University has a program for training uh, uh, in the measurement of sound. And so we had help from a professor at Rutgers to help with that end of it, and are actually using them for training courses for our inspectors and police out in the field to make sure we get sound measurements that are going to be usable in court.
Thank you. And thank you, David, for taking all of these questions as I filter through um, the many questions that we are continuing to get in. So, alrighty, we have a question from Joe Gorney. Joe asks, are there, and apologies if I'm getting any pronunciations wrong with names. Are there any generator enclosures that you found to be particularly effective?
Um, No, so I haven't been involved in any design review at that level. I'm at the rezoning level, if you will, so we don't have to look at that. But at the when they do the design, they have to take those enclosures, how they're enclosing the generators, how they're baffling the fans, all the tools that are available to them. The engineers will have to figure that out and find the best solution. But I wouldn't be in a position to answer that question.
Okay. Thank you nonetheless. Alrighty, we have a question from Stacy Musin. Again, apologies with the names. It appears the newly adopted noise ordinance does not include the octave bands for the lower frequencies. Is that correct? If so, how does the new ordinance address the core issue?
Yeah, so the DBC addresses the issue as far as the capturing those low frequencies. The octave bands are a guide. They are an appendix to our ordinance, and they're in there as a guide for to let uh, people let data centers know, okay, which frequency band are I violating that help isolate the equipment that's causing the problem, or during the design the study phase, the design phase, that they're looking at what is the goal, what am I trying when I'm modeling the sound, how am I going, what is the goal um, that I want to get to. So they are in the ordinance adopted. Again, there's possibility in the future that we may incorporate those into them. It was felt, I think, by the board to be too big a step all at once, but we did want to keep those octave band readings in there as a guide and to help in mitigation efforts.
Thank you. A question submitted anonymously in the instance that the post-construction testing is good, but neighboring property owners report discomfort or issues. Have you considered receiver-based testing? If so, at what distance?
So again, the distance is is really going to be a uh, dependent on the particular situation, um, the topography, the can affect the sound, where the placement of the buildings and units and where the residential is in relationship to that. So so distance isn't really, but I think a point, I think the noise ordinance doesn't say that it has to be at a particular point. It just has to be in a residential zoning district that you are having this violating this level. So that doesn't matter how far necessarily, though the farther away, it should be less of a problem, but not always, depending on so many situations uh, regarding topography, vegetation, and buildings in between you and the source of the noise.
Thank you. And bear with me as I'm just trying to see which questions we've sort of already covered. Let's see. There was some confusion regarding the octave band sound level, and I think that that has since been covered. Um, I mean, this has sort of been addressed, but I'm not sure if you have maybe anything additional to add here. John Wright says, why not have enforcement be third party and pass the cost on to the data center operator? Seems like a high level of public capital investment for a municipality. And I know that we've touched on that a little bit, but looks like there are a couple of questions that point to that issue. I'm going to continue to browse through the submitted questions, and if you have anything to add there, David, feel free to.
Yeah, so I think that that's a fair question. I think the since this is a criminal violation, that we have to have the police involved in it. I think if if there are not a lot of situations that you need, you could probably rely on a third party to help support the police in that. But when you have as many data centers and residential conflicts as we have in our county, I think it was probably the best investment to have that ability in-house, because it's we think that we will have some issues until it settles down, and we get these hopefully our proactive measures will work, and that we could minimize the number of violations we have over time.
Thank you. A question pulled from the chat that came a little bit earlier. Is your new ordinance all quantitative criteria, meaning no more, quote, reasonable person subjective judgments? How about grandfathering previously approved businesses?
So yeah, there's no grandfathering in the noise ordinance. You have to be in compliance with it. Um, that's and the um, so that that is part of the issue when that we didn't want to put the consultants version in there, is because we needed to make sure that we weren't creating unintended consequences of lots of restaurants and other businesses having issues because of noise. So that's certainly something we need to take into consideration when you're developing a noise ordinance.
A question from William Harris. Did the ordinance consider socioeconomic issues?
Only, no, not really. It's just resident. It's only in it's what's inherent in the zoning, underlying zoning. Again, this is tied to the zoning district, right? So we did um have different levels, different standards for different zoning districts. So only in that sense.
Thank you. An anonymous question. Are there data centers located in Prince William that operate independently of the main power grid? If so, how are they powered? It appears that data centers are now taking upon themselves of providing their own power, coal-fired natural gas generators, small modular reactors.
None that I know of.
A question that I just saw pop up in the chat, Andrea Swigert asks, are you tracking complaints regarding noise and the generation source? I might not fully understand that question, but if
Well, we are tracking complaints, right? So when the complaints come in, um, we're educating right the public on what the process is going to be. They call our 311 or go online to our 311 and put in a complaint of the noise. So we had to train our 311 operators and staff and our computer AI assisted system, 311 system to route the noise complaints for a tonal noise, a steady total noise, uh, to public works, whereas other noises would go to the police. Noise complaints might go to the police. So that's one thing. But yeah, we are setting up systems and forms, and we know you have to set up a computer system that does our complaint tracking, to go out and monitor that the inspector went out. If there's several complaints from the same source, then we'll put those together into to one complaint. We'll keep the complainant informed of what we're doing. And then when we go collect all that data, we have to figure out, well, these can be large sound files, can be large amounts of data. So we have to store them, upload them, um, analyze them. We have to put data into our system to track the complaint, all the data, what was the wind, what was the temperature, what are we had to create a form for the inspectors to fill out while they're doing this, so that we capture all the relevant data around that sound measurement, um, and uh, and we'll have to do daytime and nighttime ones to make sure that we're not violating either one of those. And so those are all important things that need to be captured and kept in a system and tracked with that case, so that you have a complete record if it does go to court.
thank you. An attendee is asking if you have a number of how many complaints there are, if you have a ballpark, if you're comfortable sharing.
Well, I don't know right now. Again, this doesn't take effect until May 1st. And I'm sure we are getting have been getting lots of complaints in the past, but I don't know a number.
Um, a question regarding regional coordination. Has there been any regional coordination on the development of guidelines, given that Northern Virginia is a major hub for data centers?
Yeah. Um, Only in the sense that we've looked and see what our peer jurisdictions are doing in the development. We are, in the process of looking at design guidelines for data centers now. And we've, asked Loudon, asked Fairfax what they're doing, and other jurisdictions too. In not only in relation to our consultants did this work, in relation to design standards for data centers, but also in terms of noise as well. We went a little farther afield for looking for um, how others handled noise, including Europe and Arizona and other places.
Thank you. A question, are tier four generators quieter than the older ones, such as tier two? You might have addressed that earlier, but just covering it just in case.
Yeah, I'm not sure on the tier the generator tiers as far as sound. My thought understanding was that it was related to um how much um it, pollution was or exhaust was coming from the generator. But based on the tiers, I thought it was related to air quality, not to sound. But I don't know that much about it, the tiers of the generators.
Thank you. Going back a little bit, Jim Segedy asks, are there any options a community might have to require noise attenuation, such as liquid cooling, double wall construction, or other acoustic techniques?
There are a lot of techniques for minimizing sound, so I um, would leave that to the engineers to figure out how they're going to mitigate it. I wouldn't put that in any requirements of they have the requirement is they meet this level of sound and they have to figure out how to get there.
Thank you. It looks like a few people had mentioned that, and several questions regarding, whether or not it had would be grandfathered in, and you touched base on that. Um, Is there anything that, I mean, I know that we're coming up to time here shortly, and there's a lot of overlap with some of these questions that were in the queue, and we've answered probably over 25 already. So I just want to check in with you, David, and see if there's anything that you want to touch on, or further discuss that you think might be missing from the discussion.
Um, yeah, I think the I mean overall the um like I said the noise uh getting the noise ordinance to address um DBC instead of just DBA is key to getting that addressing the tonal steady total noise from the HVAC systems. And so really need to look at your noise ordinance and see if you need to make that. I did actually we missed those poll questions in the I forgot about that. I could you run those now and then
Yeah,
let's see what people think about that.
absolutely. Yeah, no problem. Give me 1 second. Oops. All right, I will wait. We're currently asking, do you currently have issues with data center noise in your locality? And I'll wait till we're at about 60 or 70% participation before I close the poll. All right, there you go, David.
That's interesting. 33%, about a third are having issues. All right.
All right, let me go back. Oh, that's weird. I'm not seeing the second poll. Sorry about that. Um, we can ask folks to put it in the chat. David, do you mind reminding me what our second question was?
Yeah, is anybody, how many of you are actually looking at updating your noise ordinance?
And you guys can just plop that in the chat. Sorry about that. A lot of yeses coming in. Couple of no's. Loudoun County, yes. Suffolk's working on regulations for data centers now. Yes, yes, yes.
That's good. Well, I'm glad this was timely for you all that are working on that. And I, as a planner, I didn't expect to have to get into this much detail on noise, and what all the different dBA and dBc and dBz, and so it's certainly a new area for me to weigh in on all these things and to try and improve the quality of life of our citizens by trying to get to these noise issues. Thank you very much for everybody attending, and I hope this was helpful to you all.
I think it was, I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but I would bargain to say that it was very helpful. Thank you so much for all of this information, David. Greatly appreciated. Lots of thank yous coming through in the chat. Very helpful, great webinar, very informative. So thank you so much, David. Folks, keep your eyes peeled on your inboxes for that follow-up e-blast, which will include the link to the webinar recording, which again, hopefully at the latest will be up by Monday afternoon on the MAPC YouTube page. And stay tuned for more information about upcoming webinars in the Your Hour and MAPC webinar series. But thank you for being with us this afternoon, David. And also, I know that David is happy to be a resource. If you, I know we didn't get to every question, but more than happy to be a resource. And his contact information will be provided in that follow-up. So if you think of anything, feel free to reach out. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your afternoon.